Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Dr. Maurice Scherren, president of Newberry College in Newberry, South Carolina.
So I'll tell you, I always like to start off with really your personal journey, and I'd love to learn about who are the mentors that helped shape your path.
Yeah. I was fortunate. I began at George Mason University in terms of my career. Worked there for about 37 years and was super fortunate to work for two presidents, one for 18 years, one for 19 years. One was George Johnson, and then I followed him with Alan Merton. And I guess, what was special about it is, when we started, we had less than 5,000 students. We were a branch of University of Virginia. So we were just George Mason College of University of Virginia. Then we became independent. And, when I left in 2012, we had 37,000 students in 3 different campuses. And it was just something new was happening every day. So and they were both, I think what I loved about their mentorship is, I remember George was called a visionary, and he told me, he goes, "I'm not a visionary, because I'm usually the stupidest one in the room, because I just listen. And after I listened, I could figure out what to do, but visionary, and to this day, I still think he's visionary, but he hated the title." So.
Absolutely. So now you have been at Newberry College since 2012. Is that correct?
Yep. Just began our 12th year about a month ago. Yep.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about scaling the summit campaign and what that is?
What we did, this is my first presidency, so I probably do most everything wrong. So we began a capital campaign in 2014, and somebody had told me, "Hey, you don't announce a campaign until you've got like 50% or 60% of the funds already raised." You're going to probably get this feel for me during the next half an hour or so. I'm not very patient on some things. So we went ahead and announced it in 2014, and we hadn't raised a dollar yet. And the college, although it's 160 some years old, had never had a campaign. So being sort of a naive president, we set the campaign at $35 million. And what I can say is we did not finish it in 5 years as expected, but we did finish it in 7 years. So we raised, the initial target was 35 million. We raised about 40 million. And it was, to be honest about it, it was primarily buildings. The campus had just gotten old. So we built a Center for Teacher Education. We built a Nursing and Health Science Center. We've renovated the stadium, and we're building our second residence hall right now. So a bunch of renovations of a smaller nature, but it was truly a capital campaign.
Mm-hmm. So I'll actually go back in time a little bit. I understand now you were the CFO of the year in 2009. Is that right?
Yeah, it must have been a week year. Yeah. Yeah.
So with that background, how does that help you transform an institution having a financial background like that and coming into the presidency?
Yeah, I think probably not your typical CFO, to be honest about it. I'm not a CPA. I appreciate CPAs, but I don't. That's not who I am. I don't talk their language. So, but I think at George Mason, I came up that route. You're absolutely right. I was the senior vice president, chief operating officer for probably the last 12 or 15 years. I think what that did for me was it gave me an appreciation for the financing of higher education. To be totally honest, the transition from a very large state university to a very small private college I probably underestimated that, to be totally honest, because when I got to Newberry College, Sachs had just placed the school on financial warning. Went from financial warning to financial probation. So it took us the better part of 3.5 years to sort of turn things around. But I do think that I think what I would say with the financial background, the business background, you look for things that maybe others weren't looking at, ways to become more efficient, ways to maybe enhance revenue in areas where they really weren't paying attention. It just, I guess I had the background to do what had to get done in terms of financially turning the school around, and some hard decisions had to be made. But really, I don't believe that you ever cut yourself to greatness. So what we did was we found opportunities to grow and just really focused on growth. Even though the school hadn't grown, the school hadn't given any salary increases. It was pretty much a total culture change. I'm not even sure that the culture change is fully, permeates the campus yet, but I think we're getting there.
So you've continued to hit record enrollments, and so what, I know there's a lot that goes into that, but how do you turn things around and start changing that trajectory to now you're seeing, consistent year over year growth? I mean, how do you go about doing that?
I think I don't want to, I think it's all about people, first of all. I think, I don't know enough about a lot of different small schools, but I think it's probably true that maybe a lot of small schools put people in a position because they've been there at the school for a long time. They're good people, but they're not necessarily bred. They're not necessarily have the strength that you need to turn things around. And like when I got to Newberry actually had outsourced admissions, and I was like, what? They had outsourced it to an Ohio firm that was on campus like 1 week a month, and I was like, that's not going to work. So I think it's to use a sports analogy, because I'm a pretty simple guy. I think it came to, we're not doing any blocking, we're not doing any tackling, so of course we're not going to score. And I think it really came down to our students in 2013 adopted a phrase. It sort of became a tagline: passion, purpose, and personal attention. And I think that's something that we were not doing. We had every chance to be doing it as a small school, but we weren't really student oriented. We weren't student centered. We weren't. It was all about administrative convenience rather than being student centered. And I think Sandy's been involved now with admissions for the past 2 or 3 years. Retention before that, but I think she'd tell you the same thing. It wasn't rocket science. It was like, you got to have a really good CRM. You got to have a good communication plan. You've got to treat people like you want them to come here. And then I think the other thing I would say, you've got to be relevant. You've got to be, you've got to answer the question why. Why would they come to your school when they have so many other options? So what we've really focused on was, and our focus has been, adding attractive undergraduate programs. Now we're into graduate programs. I love the fact that we've added 7 NCAA sports. I think I know our student athletes are some of the best students in the classroom, and we've given them a reason, a reason for coming to Newberry. And to be honest about it, if somebody says, "Hey, I'm really going to college to play a sport, and I want to get a degree along with that," that's a win. That's a win. And I think we've really focused in on the co-curricular and trying to build a music department. Our marching band, Brad, was 17 students when I showed up. Now it's over 100. So I think you've got to put the resources where you can see a return on investment. I hate to use the business phrase, but you can scatter resources and get no return, or you can just focus your resources in certain areas. So,
but no, absolutely, and I would imagine too, with the breaking of ground and adding, as you had mentioned, the Athletic Performance Center and the 9th Residence Hall and the Nursing and Health Science Center, and I can go on and on.
Yeah, that's
got to be very attractive when students and also parents come to visit the campus.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I was there for 37 years. So just a quick flashback. There is nothing that's more exciting than 2 or 3 cranes on campus. I'm sorry. It's like, I know we got great faculty, we got great academic programs, but nothing excites prospective students and families more than, sometimes I wonder, would it be worth it just to rent a crane and just act like something's happening? So, but I think that really, to your point, it tells prospective students that something special is happening at this college, and we've used that phrase over and over again because, as you know, enrollments are not going up across the country. Matter of fact, they've dropped precipitously over the last decade. But I think it's I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's like we've really become more focused. I'll put it this way: we've listened to what students are saying. What are we not offering that they would like us to offer? We entered into an agreement, a partnership about 4 years ago with this consortium called RISE, R-I-Z-E. It's a consortium of about 140 small schools. And what's beautiful about it is they're schools like us that want to offer a program that we can never offer on our own: cybersecurity, neuroscience. And all it takes for some of these majors, and we have them now, all it takes is for students to take about 5 or 6 courses over 4 years of classes, take about 5 or 6 courses online from premier people in those fields, and then walk away with a cybersecurity degree from Newberry College. I think that's the future, because it costs us a whole lot less to be part of the consortium. And our students, I mean, you probably know this, every year, they're more and more okay with taking an online course once in a while. Because it's asynchronous. Hey, take it whenever you want to take it. So it's great.
Well, absolutely. And so how do you define student success?
Good question. Great question. So I'm probably going to give you the answer that makes sense to me, that makes sense to nobody else, maybe. I don't think we define it. I think it's such a personal thing that students define what personal success is, and for each one of them, it's something different. But the one thing to answer your question, I think student success through our lens, Brad, is, we talk about this a lot at the leadership group, when they walk across the stage at commencement and they're asked, would you make the same decision to come to Newberry College now 4 or 5 years later? And if their answer is yes, that's student success for us. I think what we try to do is create a learning environment. We're a liberal arts school, so we try to create a learning environment that facilitates our students becoming more open-minded, more selfless, more empathetic. While they learn, if they don't know, they learn how to treat others with respect and dignity, as we together prepare them for whatever future endeavors they want to pursue. But I think it's we're in South Carolina, so I want to make sure that we graduate students that have that embrace inclusivity, and we make a big deal about it. We're probably 40% African American. We're almost 40% first generation students. So we're giving them they're giving us a chance in 4 years for them to have a better appreciation of, what it means to embrace the differences between people.
Well, and touching upon, diversity and inclusion, I've heard from a number of presidents, without belonging, that doesn't mean too much.
Absolutely.
So how do you make sure that there is that sense of belonging or that reality of belonging?
Yeah, to be honest about it, I'm super thrilled that you're hearing that. We just hired a vice president, first one ever, vice president for diversity, equity, inclusivity, and belonging. And when she and I have had conversations about it, and we agreed, the title is out there. That's a common title now, but the order probably is backwards, because the order probably first and foremost is, how do you create an environment of belonging? And I think the first thing we've had fair success. I'm not going to say overwhelming success, but we've had fair success in increasing our number of faculty and staff of color. And I think that, more than anything else, helps people feel like they belong. If they feel like they're a minority, then it's an uphill battle all the time. And I think with 40% of our students being African American, as we keep adding, like I said, faculty and staff that are African American, and we give these incoming students peer mentors that are also students of color, if they are a student of color, I think that begins to help. Just a small example. We've been doing this for I guess about 2.5 years. Once a month, I hold a session with our African American students. It's just a Sunday evening with the president, and it began with African American males. The females heard about it, so they joined in. It's really been one of those places where I don't know. We create a safe place and give them a chance to talk about whatever's on their minds. And I know being an older white male, I can't do it, so I'm surrounded by staff that are staff and faculty of color, and it's just what they say sometimes you hate to hear, but in hearing it, you get a chance to fix it. I heard one student who was doing just great. I think he was a senior, great GPA, and I asked him, how things were going and why are they going so well, and he said, my parents taught me at a young age how to stay out of the spotlight, how to stay under the radar. And that probably means for me not being who I want to be, but just staying under the radar. And I thought, he wasn't complaining, but nothing broke my heart more than that. It's like, so we got to fix that. Because that's not welcoming. That's them being who they think they need to be just to get through. And so I think we're making progress on that, Brad, but I think I talk about this all the time. Some of my staff hates it. I know they do. I think for us to be effective, you got to be intrusive. I think intrusive leadership is what it's all about at a small college, and I think that's helped us, because you can't wait for. We have early alert systems like everybody else, but an early alert system, I'm sorry, it's an oxymoron. It's not early enough. Yeah. So I think by being more intrusive, we got a better chance for those students to have success.
So when you look at first generation students, how do you make sure that the students and the families understand that Newberry College is affordable?
I think what we're really good at is a couple of things. One, Brad, about 8 years ago, the board passed the recommendation that I made in terms of the Newberry College tuition promise. So 8 years ago, we began this program where if you come to Newberry College, you're not going to have a tuition increase. And I think that's helped a great deal. But the second thing, because a graphic sometimes is worth 1,000 words, we put up what the net price is to come to Newberry College, and we compare it to 4 or 5 of the state institutions, and we are. There's a couple that have a lower price than we have. I'm not sure that I would send my son or daughter to those schools, but we're very competitive, and it's right off the other schools' websites, so there's no games being played. But it is our way to say, look at the sticker price once and then forget it, because you're not going to pay anything near the sticker price. And so I think when our incoming class comes in, larger this year than ever before, a big part of that is we've proven to them that it's affordable. We've proven to them that their class size is going to be small. They're not going to have classes over 25 students. And we joke about the fact that, gosh, I've said this at so many orientations and open houses. I tell the parents and the students, you can miss a class, and you're going to miss a class. But when you miss that second class, don't be surprised if that professor tells the class, pick up your books, we're having class somewhere else. And they walk over to the residence hall, knock on your door, and then that's where class is going to be. And to be totally honest with you, I heard that story in my first year, and I thought, hey, that's a great story. I don't believe it, but it's a great story. And then I was here for a while, and it's what our faculty do. It's what they do.
So can you talk about local relationships? And really how that ties into a student's career path. There's jobs today that aren't going to exist in 10 years, and then there's jobs in 10 years that aren't here right now. So how do you make sure that you're building those business relationships and really helping to carve out the path for students in their careers?
It's interesting. Newberry's a small town. It's probably no more than a half a mile from campus. But the downtown's just a beautiful downtown, but it's a lot of old businesses, a lot of what you and I might call mom and pop operations. What we've done over the years, some mostly not paid, but our students will go down there as interns and work for those shop owners. And I wish I could say that I saw this coming, but I didn't. What we have found is most of these older owners know nothing about websites, know nothing about social media, know nothing about being online and sales online, and they just love when our students come down there, because that's what our students are good at. Because you don't have to be good at the business. You have to be good at how do you market the business. And I think that has just been a phenomenal connection between us and downtown. We've also got some very large corporations. It's called KissWire. It's called Samsung. So we have nice internships with them. Our social and behavioral science majors are probably the best in terms of internships. Our nurses do their clinical work now. It used to be that they did their clinical work quite a distance from Newberry. Now they do it at the hospital. So that's a beautiful connection. Our students love the fact that they're not driving 30 minutes down the road. But gosh, the number of students that we have with the police department, the sheriff's department, mental health, all these health service providers, it's really it's grown from nothing, because there was nothing 12 years ago. We got a brand new dean of the School of Business. He hasn't pulled this off yet, but what he wants to do is he wants to make it a graduation requirement that you have an internship before you graduate. And what's beautiful about that is business and sports management are our two largest majors. And if he can pull that off with all those students having an internship, that'll do nothing but just build a stronger community between us in the city and county. We got a great relationship with the city mayor. Gosh, I just interviewed somebody today at noon. I said, what do you think about things? They're from a school in Georgia. And she said, I hadn't heard this before. She goes, this is like a scene out of Mayberry. What's the deal here? There's got to be something you're not telling me. People get along. She spent last night in the community. We don't have it figured out yet, but we're getting better. We're getting better.
Well, absolutely. Now, how do you make sure well, I guess a question for you, how big do you want to get? How many students do you want to get, or how big can you get?
Yeah. It's some of your questions are so funny because when I got here, we had about 950 students, and we started growing. And I'd hear these rumblings by faculty and staff, and the rumbling would be this: we were told if we ever got to 1,000, it would be like panacea, or if we ever got to 1,100 or 1,200. We crested over 1,500 this year. We're at 1,521. And I would answer the question. It's so funny because we had to put students in a hotel for the first time. And they're out of the hotel now. We got them back on campus, but because after things shake out a little bit, Brad, then you get some late melt and you get the students back on campus. But somebody said, will you ever just say you can't take any more good students? And my only comment was, not during my presidency, because I saw what this school was like when I got here. So when you ask, we don't, we utilize the classrooms, but we could get greater utilization out of the classrooms. We've maxed out the residence halls, so we are building residence halls because we can't build beyond where we are without another residence hall or two. We're going to add a couple of sports next year. That's a nice little assist, if you will, for enrollment management, because that's 40 students in those two sports. It's a great question. I could see the college. Somebody's writing a book right now about how's Newberry College, bucking all the trends. I could see us approaching 2,000, but to get there, it'd be a combination, clearly, of undergraduate students, graduate students, dual degree students. We're getting more and more of those. But to be totally honest, I don't have a magic number. We were at 1,250 last year. I would never have guessed that we'd be at 1,520 this year. So it causes some problems. And I'll shout this from the highest mountain: these are good problems. Get over it and get over it. These are good problems. We'll figure it out. But I think if we could grow by 3 to 5% a year, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. I think we're doing a lot of the right things.
Well, how do you make sure that you continue to expand your brand? And I mean expand your brand really geographically. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a number of institutions who may have a strong brand name, within 2 hours of campus or within 3 hours of campus. But once you start getting outside of your specific state, it's not as easy, and the competition gets even more difficult. So how do you make sure that brand continues to resonate locally, but also expand nationwide and maybe globally?
Okay. I think a couple of things. This year, we doubled our market share in Newberry County. And I think,
wow.
But I think it says more about the past maybe than the present, because it was there, but you, this is a phrase I use all the time. You've got to build believers, and you're not going to build believers when you got an old campus and you haven't built a building. You haven't built a building for 30 or 40, 50 years, and it looks, it's one thing to look old, but it's another thing to look old and not kept up. So I think we had to overcome those things, and maybe the next president will be that bigger dreamer, like you just mentioned. I think what's really important for us is to own that 2 to 3 hour radius, as there's not a better small college to attend. And I think when we extend beyond that, Brad, to be totally honest, and we are, it's on the heels of sports, and I don't mind, because what's happening is we're adding sports that are making us attractive in areas that we were never attractive before. Like we are a much bigger player now in the Mid-Atlantic, the Virginia, Maryland, D.C., New Jersey, Delaware, because we've added sports. Like we've added lacrosse, and it's really big up in that area. Surprisingly, it's also big in Canada. So our number one international country is Canada, and we're getting big numbers there. And what's happening is they're attracting non-student athletes because they're friends, and they're hearing the story. I think, to be totally honest, I don't want to. I like where you're going, but my mind hasn't gone there yet. I really want us to get a bigger market share of the Carolinas, Georgia, especially. We're pretty big in northern Florida, but I'd be real happy just getting a bigger piece of that action.
Yeah. What's the number one question that you get? If you're doing a campus tour, or you're talking to a prospective parent or parents, what's the number one question you get from them?
I think what's happening is it's shifting a little bit toward the value proposition in terms of, okay, you've convinced me that, hey, we're not going to pay $40-some thousand, we're going to pay like $16,000. Okay, got it. You're competitive, but I think the value proposition is, what are your graduates doing? What are they doing 6 months out? So we're really focusing on resources for career development. We are doing a better job, I think, marketing what our recent grads are doing. It's always nice to throw in an older grad to show how well they've climbed the ladder. But I think if that's not the number one, it's a close number two. I think the number one is the student experience. What can you say about the student experience, especially if my son or daughter is not playing a sport? Because if they're playing a sport, they pretty much answered. You know what I mean? They pretty much answered the student experience question. But for those that are not playing an NCAA sport, is it safe? Is it secure? Are there things to do? Are there hopefully, we're lucky because we have low crime in the area. But is it just something where you're gonna build character? And I think that's probably the first and second question. I can tell you real quick that the biggest void that we have, and it's hard to even say this because, gosh, what are we now? 167 years old. The school has never had a student union. Ever. So that's our number one priority in terms of fundraising right now, because that can just embellish the student experience. It'll just be student space. So we've got it designed. The architects already got that designed. It's just as a private school, as you know, we just got to raise the money.
So now, where do you see Newberry in 10 years?
I'd like to see. I'd like to see a couple of things, and these are all things that shouldn't take 10 years to get there. So let me say that first of all. But I'd like to see us be a school with more and more partnerships with name schools. Like we've got a real strong partnership now with Duke. We've got a real strong partnership with Clemson in terms of engineering. Duke is environmental studies, because we can't be everything to everybody. And I don't see any downside to spending 3 years at Newberry, spend a fourth year at a Duke or a Clemson earn a Newberry degree and a master's degree from one of those schools. So I think I want to see us bigger into that than ever before. I think something's going to happen for Newberry that you and I would never think of right now. And that's the beauty of it, is I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know whether it's law school, medical school. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it's going to be something that's going to just, because you want to keep answering the question why. Why does somebody want to go there? I think we're going to keep adding sports. I think we're going to become a place on the sport front where women as well as men just love coming. I mean, we're adding women's wrestling. We're adding women's acrobatics and tumbling. We're going to add women's flag football next year. And then I hope what we become is, I hope the college becomes a completer school for adult education, because I think you've got so many adults out there that have some college hours and a great amount of life experience that ought to be able to be transferable to college credits really easily and help them conveniently get that college degree. And then the last thing I'd say is I think certificates are going to become big. I think earning different certificates, either on your way to a college degree or short of a college degree, are going to be a pathway to a lot of careers. And I think we need to be a leader in that. So.
Well, excellent. Well, President Maurice Scherren from Newberry College. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Just for what it's worth, nobody except my mother calls me Maurice. Everybody calls me Maury. So
Maury. Okay, I'm writing that down.
Okay, do that, because actually nobody knows me by Maurice. So, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the time you've given me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And if it's all right, I'll stay in touch with you and then continue to follow up.
Okay. Sounds good, Brad. Thanks a lot.
Take care. All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yep. All right.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.